All right, Diane, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason. Can you all hear me?
Not very well.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. Great to see all of you. I would like to announce that the next book review will be May 13th at 12:30. The Star and the Shamrock will be reviewed by Sandy Burley. And I hope you will all join us. It is my pleasure, to introduce Judy Myers, who will review The Dressmaker of Khair Khana by Gayle Tzemach Lemmon. Judy is a longtime member of Emanu El. She is a volunteer at the Holocaust Museum, the Small Business Administration Housing Houston SCORE chapter. Search, and a special thank you, Judy, for volunteering right here at Emanu El. Many thanks to Jason Plotkin and David Tanner. We could not have had this evening without them. Thank you, Susan Septimus and Ed. And I'll now turn the program over to Judy.
Okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate being invited to handle this program this evening. And I hope that it will be one that will have a lot of give and take, and that we will share our ideas and our impressions from this most interesting book. And thank you to Susan for asking me and for sharing this wonderful program throughout the years. So before we really begin, I want to kind of set the agenda for tonight. And that would be that I'm not the speaker here. I'm not going to be speaking this whole time. No way, have no fear. But we want to have it more be a discussion, because I think there's a lot of things to discuss as a result of reading this book. I'm fully aware that not everybody on this call has actually read the book yet, or all of the book, but maybe this will inspire you to go ahead and read it if you have not. And so we're going to break up our evening with our program with some information, some discussion, some more information, and then discussion again. So that's what we have the chat box for, everybody. Please use, when something comes to you, a note, something, an idea, a question, a comment, put it in the chat box, because I don't know about you, my ideas go in one ear and out the other very quickly. So go ahead and put it on in the chat, so that we can then get to as many as we can. So I think that's it. Also, as Jason said, I do want to reiterate, please keep yourself muted so that we are not disturbing each other when we have unexpected noises in our own homes. So tonight is about the book, The Dressmaker of Khair Khana. And I do have to say, I made an effort to try to find out how some of these words are pronounced. Some of them I got, some of them I didn't. So if you all know better, please put it in the chat or let us know, and then you can set us straight on it. And the author is Gayle Tzemach Lemmon. So welcome to the world of Kamila Sidiqui and her family in Khair Khana in Afghanistan, when the Taliban invaded and began to control their lives. The book contains many themes, topics to consider and to discuss. So therefore, we're going to begin by briefly summarizing the book and introducing the author. So those of you who haven't read it, you will know by the next 5 minutes exactly what it was all about. So the Dressmaker of Khair Khana, 5 sisters, 1 remarkable family, and the woman who risked everything to keep them safe, is the nonfiction debut of American journalist and author Gayle Tzemach Lemmon. It's first published in 2011. It chronicles the story of Kamila Sidiqui, a young woman living under the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, who became a fashion entrepreneur at a time when the rights of women were strictly limited. Lemmon traveled to Afghanistan to study women entrepreneurs in conflict zones. That's a very important phrase. Women entrepreneurs in conflict areas. She was fascinated by Sidiqui's story and met with her and her family over the course of several trips to Afghanistan in 2005. Exploring themes of religion, women's rights, determination, and adaptability, and Afghani culture, The Dressmaker of Khair Khana was a bestseller and received overwhelming acclaim upon its release. It was praised for its in-depth portrayal of Afghani culture and its fascinating central figure. So the book begins as Lemmon quits her job to earn an MBA focusing on international development. Seeking out female entrepreneurs in war zones, she travels to Kabul, Afghanistan in 2005 to study successful women making a living in the aftermath of Taliban rule. This is where she meets Kamila and her family. In 1996, Kamila is 19. She'd just gotten her teacher certificate and plans to be a teacher. Her father, a former military official, has encouraged her to study and pursue her dreams. However, the Taliban begins taking control of Afghanistan in one province at a time. Taliban forces begin brutally beating women who don't conform to their standards of modesty, something Kamila's older sister, Malika, witnesses while taking her sick son to the doctor. It's also something that nobody was used to until the Taliban came in and took control. Soon, women are banned from attending school and working and cannot appear in public without a burqa and a male escort. Although Kamila's father tries to instill compassion in his daughters, he himself is soon forced to flee the country due to his ties to the previous government, and his daughters are left to fend for themselves in a hostile environment. Stuck at home with no male escort, it is especially hard on Kamila's younger sister, whose name is Saman, an elite academic whose college career has been derailed, of course. Kamila organizes a neighborhood book swap to allow Saman to keep reading. She later hears of women running businesses out of their homes, and she considers sewing clothing to make money. The sisters learn that their father is safe in Pakistan, and their mother and brother Najib leave to go join him there. Kamila, with her younger brother Rahim as an escort, leaves the house to obtain materials and secure orders for her wares, for her clothing. A very dangerous mission. Using the alias Roya, Kamila obtains orders from local tailors and she designs valuable dresses with the help of Malika. Malika is already a skilled seamstress. Soon, demand eclipses their ability to produce dresses, and Sarah, a local widow, becomes their first employee. Kamila hires other local women to work as seamstresses and comes up with the idea of starting a covert school in the Sidiqui home, which she does. Hiring young women as apprentices, Kamila teaches them tailoring skills and allows them to earn a living in secret. When Kamila is hired to design dresses for a wedding, it's a tall order, but she and her team manage. And I can't see everybody's faces, but I know that when those of you who have read it, you probably have a smile on your face because you know exactly what this order is referencing. So the wedding turns out to be for Taliban loyalists. And the bride tells the Taliban that they can trust Kamila. They came out apparently with all of the clothes that were needed by this family in record time. And so I guess they really impressed the Taliban. Mr. Sidiqui returns home briefly and is amazed by what his daughters have accomplished. He's on his way now to Iran with Najib as they seek to avoid the Taliban. So he had to leave Afghanistan, he went to Pakistan, then he went to Iran. These are people who really love their country, Afghanistan. So now we're up to 1998, and two women from the UN Habitat recruit Kamila to be part of Community Forums, which is an organization, international organization, aiming to help Kabul residents learn business skills. It's a dangerous job, and Malika is upset, believing that Kamila will put their family and business in jeopardy. Kamila takes the opportunity and learns more about the poverty and despair that has hit Kabul since the Taliban's takeover. In 2000, Kamila is a successful entrepreneur and community leader. So we started at about 1996, and now we're already into 2000. She's on her way to attend a UN Habitat training session when the Taliban boards their bus. Again, I can imagine what those of you who've read it must have a smile on your face, knowing what this incident was. She's a clever woman, Kamila. So Kamila's fast talking convinces the Taliban soldier that they're going to meet her brother. And he goes for it eventually. I guess she wears him down. She later learns that a friend of hers was arrested in a separate sting. And now in 2001, U.S. Army goes to war with the Taliban over their harboring of Osama bin Laden and the 9/11 attacks. Kamila's family huddles underground during the bombings, praying. In November of 2001, the Taliban withdraws from Kabul. The country is in chaos, but Kamila is determined that this is the beginning of a brighter future for her family. Then in 2005 is when Lemmon meets Kamila for the first time, and Kamila has become an official in Mercy Corps, a global aid organization, and continues to train women entrepreneurs in Afghanistan. She continues to do that today, which we will go over later in the program. So as we now have looked at the story, the summary of the story, I hope that you all have somewhat of an idea about how it went, although reading it is much more exciting than listening to me read this summary. So I urge those of you who haven't, go ahead and read it. So who is the author of this story? She was Gayle, who's born Yael Tzemach. She was born in 1973. And if we do some math here, we will realize that she and Kamila are about the same age, maybe within 2 years of each other. We're also going to find out that they have a lot in common. They are just soul sisters, I call them. So she was raised by her mother, whose name was Rhoda Miriam Spielman Tzemach, raised in Greenbelt, Maryland. She was raised by her mother and her godmother and neighbors in a community of single moms. She was inspired by this hardworking group of women. And I quote, she says, when so many people around you are working constantly and making it clear that education is the key to not having a life like theirs, it instills in you how hard it is to be poor. From early on, I was focused And I knew that everyone was sacrificing so that I could have a life that was different. End of quote. Her mother died when Gayle was 13, so she went to live with her grandmother, a very successful businesswoman herself, by the way. And I couldn't find much mention of her father. We know that he wasn't in the picture, that she was raised by all of these women. But they must have been in touch because at some point he made it possible for her to land her first job for a production company. That's about all that I could really find about her father. Gayle earned a BA in journalism, summa cum laude from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. She worked in the ABC News political unit and served as producer in the first year of This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Gayle later graduated with an MBA from Harvard Business School, focusing her work on, you can fill it in, women's entrepreneurship. She's a former Fulbright scholar and also worked in the executive office and in emerging markets at the global investment firm PIMCO. She's apparently very busy still in the field of journalism. And she tells a couple of stories about her career beginnings that I wanted to share with you because I think it'll give us an idea of what kind of a personality she is. She's always thinking bigger, and I'm quoting, "Talk about terrified. My second TED Talk, which was on Ashley's War, her second book, which is now being made into a movie, was probably the most nervous I have ever been. The night before, I was pacing in my hotel room, telling myself, you are not going to choke. All the people you grew up with did not sacrifice for you to be choking in a hotel room at 9:59 p.m. You better get it together." I was still nervous that morning, and then right before I spoke, Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda went on. They were so nervous, I think they were drinking hard liquor. All of a sudden, I wasn't nervous because I thought those two are so incredibly brilliant. And if these veteran public figures are nervous, then it's okay for me to be nervous. And I was fine. And she's gone on to do many other TED Talks and public speaking, of course. One more story she tells about herself, and I quote again. "When I was trying to sell my book, The Dressmaker, I got this email from a very big literary agent who said, 'I've read what you sent me. You've made a career of exceeding expectations and defying odds, but I really don't see anything here that suggests a book. Anything at all.' It was devastating. I still have the email, and one day I'm going to frame it. I woke up the next day and went about the work of finding another agent. And I realized the universe works the way it's supposed to because I love the agent I have now. You can let yourself have a moment of feeling like a failure, and then you get back up and you go on." So one more quote from Gayle. Why did she write this book? Quote, "Brave young women complete heroic acts every day with no one bearing witness. This was a chance to even the ledger, to share one small story that made the difference between starvation and survival for the families whose lives it changed. I wanted to pull the curtain back for readers on a place foreigners know more for its rocket attacks and roadside bombs than its countless quiet feats of courage, and to introduce them to the young women like Kamila Sidiqui who will go on no matter what." So that's a bit of an introduction to the author, but I really want you to hear from her lips in an interview that we're now going to hear that that's being done by Laura John of Women for Women International. And I don't know if any of you have come in contact with that organization, Women for Women International. Probably some of you have, but I wanted to look up to see, what is it that they do. And their mission is, we will always do everything in our power to help women all over the world unlock the power and agency inside themselves. So from what I've learned about Kamila and what I've learned about Gayle Tzemach Lemmon, this is a perfect person to be doing this interview with her. So I do want to repeat when you learn something or something piques your interest in this clip that we're going to now see and hear from this interview, put it in the chat. Or, if you want to write it down and try to get our attention, that's fine. And but it would probably be better to put it in the chat so that we can read it and talk about it. So without further ado, I guess I'll ask David to play this YouTube for us, and we should be having the closed captions. It's not always easy to hear Gayle's speaking in this.
Hi, welcome to the Women for Women International Book Club. I'm Laura Jan, and I'm joined today by author, activist, and journalist Gayle Tzemach Lemmon. Welcome, Gayle.
Hi, good morning. I don't know if I deserve all those titles, but I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
You absolutely do. I'm so thrilled that you could join us. Thank you for making the time. As you know, we recently read your book, The Dressmaker of Khair Khana, and it was actually a recommendation from a reader, and it was honestly the perfect fit for this book club because we have so much respect and admiration for the women of Afghanistan. We have programs there, and we work with more than 4,000 women through our programs in Afghanistan, and we know how important it is to share the stories of women there. So thank you for bringing Kamila's story to the rest of the world. We received some really great reader feedback, and we decided to extend an invitation to readers to see if they had any questions that they wanted to ask you directly. And before we get into the reader questions, I wanted to ask if you could give some background on the book, The Dressmaker of Khair Khana, and what inspired you to write.
Sure. First of all, it's great to be with you. I had known founders of Women for Women. I've obviously been tracking your work over the years and interviewed women who were part of the program at Women for Women Bubble, maybe 2006, 2007, many moons back. And what inspired me to write the book was really understanding that there were a whole host of stories about women changing their world, about people who did not stand for the status quo, but believed deeply that their lives could do something to alter it. And I met Kamila in December of 2005 when I was actually at business school. And I had left journalism to go to business school and pursue an MBA and wanted to write about entrepreneurs and conflict and societies, which sounds very boring until you actually meet the people who are doing it. And I met this young woman who was telling me about how she was determined to start this consulting business in Afghanistan in December of 2005. And she sounded like Richard Branson or, somebody who, an entrepreneur with vision. And I said, how do you know this much about business? And I just paused the interview and she said, oh, I thought you knew this is my third business. My first business I started under the Taliban, and we did so much good work for our community that I realized the power of business. And she said, I was supposed to be a teacher, but war took everything from us. Mm-hmm. And the one thing they had left was they could start home businesses because they weren't on the street. They weren't within Taliban site. They were more or less following all the Taliban rules. And they made the difference between survival and starvation for their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, this story flies in the face of everything you think you know about women, about war, about Afghanistan. It is not about a victim story. It's a story about young women who decided that they would change their own community for themselves without any foreigners, without anybody else supporting. They would roll up their sleeves, tap into their God-given talents, and make a difference. And I thought that whole narrative of the victim had to be crushed.
Mhm.
And that it was going to be crushed by stories like this of homegrown change agents who made a difference between survival and starvation at an absolutely impossible time.
That's awesome. And actually, a really lovely segue to the first reader question. So thank you for setting that up so perfectly. So our first question is from reader It's Megroll. And she asked, I really admire the entrepreneurial spirit and resiliency of Kamila. While telling her story and after you concluded writing the book, did you ever imagine where she would end up today?
I did, because I think she would be somebody who would be a leader any place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether she was in UK or whether she was in her country. But the thing is, she's a patriot. I mean, deeply, deeply loves her nation and was raised to by her father. And so, no, I think I asked her dad that actually once in the banks of the Pancha River. And, you know, he looked at me and he said, no, I never was surprised because first God, then me, then Kamila took care of my family. And I never doubted she could do it. And I thought, you know, a young woman who was raised like that with as much God-given time as she had, yeah, no, I didn't doubt it.
Yeah. And that really comes through in the book too, like the determination. And just as a reader, like I'm not at all surprised that she went on to do and continue to do really amazing things. So this next question is from Amber Lee MK, who writes, you made it clear in the book that Kamila's family valued education. She was a certified teacher. Her father made sure that all of his children were educated. What are your thoughts on the relationship between educating girls and advancing women's rights?
Educating girls is the center to making sure the world is better, smarter, richer, safer, healthier.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
And that is because they sit right at the center of the family. And educated girls are more likely to bring in income. Income brings dignity. Dignity brings the ability to find certain different circumstances. If you're facing domestic abuse, it gives women incomes, give women many more chances to find different paths if they're facing abuse. That is not to put it on the women, but it's simply to say that it's much easier to find another path when you aren't worried about where you're going to eat.
Yes.
And how, most importantly for most women, how you're going to feed your children.
Absolutely.
And I've seen it over and over again that women who have brought income into the house have completely changed the calculus of power in their home. Sometimes people will say, well, there's an uptick in violence in the short term because as the partner adjusts the situation. But I've seen it in Afghanistan. I've seen it in Rwanda. I've seen it in West Africa. Just women talking about money is power. And it's the first thing that Kamila said to me when I met her in 2005. She said, money is power for women and earning an income earns respect. And that's why girls' education matters, because education is so very central to moving up the income.
Absolutely. Excellent.
Judy, there is a question.
Okay.
There is a question or a
Okay.
remark from Beverly Suffian. If they could only wear the chador, when did the women get to wear the beautiful clothes?
Well, I had the same question. Maybe some of you would like to respond to it as well. I thought, you know, they're always buying these clothes, and so many of the vendors are making all these clothes and beautifully beaded, and they're not just you know, they're not just the sweats that we've been wearing for the past year. And so, what do you think, Susan?
I think that the truth is that they wore them in private. I mean, when they were in their homes, they were able to actually take off the burqa and do what needed to be done in the clothes that they could accomplish these things in. And, you know, they were free of most of the restrictions. So that's my answer. But I also have a comment. As mothers of boys, which you and I both are, I'd like to stress how important it is to teach our sons the value of women's intelligence and the value of women's work. Because if we don't teach our sons those lessons, I think that we are doing our sons and the daughters of the world, society, a terrible disservice.
You're here. Thank
And
you.
from Claire to everyone, Kamila loved her country, Afghanistan, a real patriot. She realized how important education is. She could have just made and sold clothing, which women wore under their burqas. She was very courageous to go to market to sell the clothing. The idea of beginning a school so that so many others could benefit from her business plan is amazing. Her faith and daily,
I don't know what
didn't come through.
else?
Her faith, I could see faith, but it doesn't come through. But that's true.
It's probably patriotism. I know it doesn't look like it, but thank you. Thank you, Claire. And
it was her,
who would like to
her
comment
daily,
on that?
it was her daily prayers and her daily religious routine that kept her grounded. She never lost that, despite what was happening to women and all around her.
So I hope you were able to hear that in the conversation and understand that certainly came through. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Because I think there were lots of things in there. You know, she was determined, and she still is, Kamila, to challenge the status quo. And she's, as Gayle said, she's certainly a very determined person. Very determined. So I think maybe we ought to learn a little bit more about her. If we can do that, through an interview that was on PBS in 2015. And the interview is between Gayle and Kamila.
Sidiqui's journey began in the days of Taliban rule, when women weren't permitted to work or go to school, or even to leave the house without a male chaperone. Determined to support her family and with few options left given the Taliban's rules, Sidiqui turned to business. She learned to make dresses, and from one dress she sewed to help her family survive, she built a living room business that provided jobs and an income to girls and women all around her neighborhood.
And what did those times teach you?
To be more confident that we can, if we want to work and have commitment, we can bring some change.
That change is not easy in a country where violence against women remains rampant, child marriage is entrenched, and female literacy rates remain well below 50%. The past decade has brought progress. More than 3 million girls in school and women as police officers, teachers, and lawmakers. Alongside that progress, however, is the looming uncertainty of insecurity.
Do you ever get worn down by, a security situation, or by, when a big attack happens, or when the headlines are tough, or when you see what's happening right now with protests on the street? Do you ever question your commitment to stay?
Sure, I have a good feeling for my country. I always concern about all this accident that it happened in my country every day. All Afghan people are concerned, and I'm also very concerned about these things that happen. But I love my country. I have commitment.
Sidiqui remains committed to her country in part because she never really left. Even during the Civil War, she stayed in school despite rocket attacks and street-by-street trench warfare all around her. Like so many other Afghans, she stayed behind to build the best life she could despite growing up amid 3 decades of war. At a dinner this week for President Ghani, Secretary of State John Kerry paid tribute to Sidiqui's achievements.
I met her on my first trip to Kabul when I was Secretary of State, and she is a very brave entrepreneur who started her own business in her home at a time when the Taliban kept all women off the street, And I would like to honor her also, if everybody would simply, she's so
Sidiqui had in fact missed the dinner in order to attend a street vigil in Washington for Farkhunda, the young Afghan woman murdered by the mob in Kabul last week. Sidiqui's visit to Washington has been a whirlwind of interviews, White House meetings, and conferences, including this one at Georgetown University featuring Afghan women leaders.
Today, we have a lot of opportunity. If someone wants to establish a business, it's very easy to go and register a company and do a business.
Your father had 9 girls and 2 boys and made sure that every one of them was educated. Is education a personal issue for you because of that?
Sure. As you know that today I'm working in the office of the president. That's all because of my father and my mother, that they gave us a chance, and in such a difficult times in Afghanistan, and they always focus for the education of their children. In this case, it's not only important in my family, it's important in my country.
Is there anything that gives you concern or things that keep you up at night worrying about the future?
Security. Security of my country, especially those people that they are living in the very remote area and in the very different provinces, that there is no good life for women. Security is important for us, and I'm concerned about.
Well, we talked years ago, you went on a bus down south to do a presentation wearing your burqa, chadri, and you were talking to a mullah, I think, who said, if I knew my daughter would turn out like you.
Yes, you remember that. It was in Kandahar when I provided a training in Kandahar. It was a gender training in business. And that was his comment about me, and he promised to me that I will give my support for my girl to be like you in the future.
Do you think about yourself as a role model?
I hope. Let's people judge.
For the NewsHour, I'm Gayle Tzemach Lemmon in Washington.
Thank you, David. So now we know more, and we can see the two of them together. As I said, they seem to be so much alike. They don't look alike. They seem to be so much alike, though, and they are about the same age. And I think if you read the epilogue in the book, you read the comment that Gayle said to her, you know, when we're going to have to, one of these days, we're just going to have to go ahead and get married, and we need to do it before, I think, 2008. And you know what they did? They both ended up getting married around the same time. So I guess they are soul sisters. I love that piece about where then Secretary of State John Kerry's looking around the room to honor her. And I know it's not something funny that she was out because there was some serious protesting going on, but that she had deemed that was more important than her being honored in this banquet. I just love that part of it. And does anyone have? I don't see any other comments in the chat.
Ellen Grayboy has a question. She's raising her hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was fascinated by the fact that, you know, they had to, if they went out and they were, you know, had that, I don't know what you call it, not a burqa, but a chador or something, and they were all covered up, but they could go with a young man, her brother, as young as 10 or 11, and they could go to the market with the brother. And that just fascinated me, that they could pick somebody so young. And, you know, if they had to go to the shops where they were selling the dresses. And it just, I don't know, it just fascinated me that such a young man would be the protector.
Child.
Right.
I happened to be a boy child.
Right.
Thank you, Ellen. A good point.
I'd like to say, Judy, one of the things that surprised me in the book, this is Ruth, was that the mother joined her husband and left with the Taliban in town left those girls alone. I mean, I don't know if nobody else noticed that. To me, I guess being a helicopter mother, that was the strongest thing I took out of the book. I thought, how can she be leaving all these girls? I don't know what anybody else thought or if it bothered anybody else but me.
I had a lot of other questions about the actually, not just that, but I thought it was pretty surprising that that big family remained unscathed, all of them, and in all of that danger that they were facing every day. And so there were a lot of surprising things that are definitely in the book. So just to let you know more about Kamila, because she has an official website herself, and she is now a prominent economic activist in Afghanistan who has worked in leadership roles in various sectors. For the past several years, she's been actively engaged in promoting gender issues, private sector development, transparency, and anti-corruption in Afghanistan. So you heard that in what Gayle was uncovering in that first interview that we listened to. What she was uncovering, that it's what Kamila has been dedicated to ever since we met her at age 19, and she still is at, as I said, somewhere around age 45. I think that's what she is right now. So I'd like to talk. Now I'm going to try to share my screen and talk about what she and others are doing right now. So kind of raise your hand if you can see that this is a website for and I do not know how to pronounce this. So we're just going to say it's the KBDS, the Korean Business Development Service, which she started in 2004 and was the chair of the president of it for 10 years. And I think that it's now moved. It was KBDS, and then it morphed into many more things. So many of you who know me know that I'm very involved on a volunteer basis, of course, with Small Business Administration here in this country, and we have a local chapter, and we help SCORE helps people who are wanting to either start a business or improve their business, and they all have a passion. Every one of the people that comes, well, what used to come to our office, now we do it all virtually. And every one of them is passionate about what they want to do. If they want to sell vegan ice cream, they are really passionate about that. And if they want to make widgets, they're really passionate about that. And it doesn't matter. It's one thing after another. If you're a playwright and you want to get your plays seen and heard and published, you're passionate about it. But most of them don't have any idea how to manage it business-wise. Well, that's exactly what this KBDS does. So let's just look at, in the time that we have left here, let's just look at some of the things that they do and what are their products and what are their services. I really like this one with carry-on cabs. And here, and you see at a glance, it's women-owned business, taxi services. 65% of the clients are women. They use deluxe cars, 24/7 services. You remember when she said that one of her big concerns is security? Well, this is quite a while. Well, there's the deluxe cars. I hope that you can see them on your screen. And they call it, well, we're going to get to a picture where we can see what they call it. Other one, they even have a guest house. So if you ever get to Afghanistan, you can know to look up this guest house so that you can stay there. That's run by this KBDS. Let's see. Oh, so I want to see. And they also sell petroleum too. So here, what are they doing? What did she start doing when she was, right after the Taliban came? Teaching. So that's what they're doing, and they're teaching people, and mostly women, not only crafts and skills, but the business part of it. Because as I was going through all of this website, I saw one of the first things I saw was you have to teach them how to write a business plan. Well, that I go to sleep at night thinking about how many people I've told that to during the day when I've been talking with future entrepreneurs, is the importance of writing a business plan. Let's see, here they are learning how to run this machine, I guess. For more teaching, here you can see they I think almost everybody in this room has their heads covered, but they're not in the full whatever it was, chokra, whatever it was called, that the Taliban required. So at least when this picture was taken, that was not required. So here's what they do. One of the products that they have, and it's fruits, dried fruits, nuts, and here they are sorting them and getting them ready for shipment. Looks like all women to me. What about to you? So here, I love this picture, and I really want to kind of wrap up my part of it, and then we can discuss whatever you want to else about the book. But I want you to take a look at this. If any of you have been to any kind of business conferences, which I have to believe that most of you have, it looks just like this. And I doubt whether you've been to one in Afghanistan. Maybe you have, but and they all look like this. It's tables, and you put your brochures down, and then you have these screens that show with pictures what your product is, what your service is. And so this is what I wanted to tell you. This is what they call their transportation business.
Pink taxi.
Pink taxi. So I just love that. And this is their goods that they sell. So I really wanted to, I want to wrap up, as I said, my part of this, as I said, we'll, take whoever wants to talk about anything about this book and have questions or comments, please go ahead. But this shows us that what we are doing, what she is doing, what Kamila is doing, what she started and what she's doing, not just in Afghanistan, but all over the world, is what we are doing in this country as well. And we all know that we have a long way to go. I could quote you statistics about women-owned businesses and how little profit they make compared to men-owned businesses, and how women come to say, I can't spend time on my business because I'm the one that takes care of the children. And if there is, many of them are single mothers, but if there is a spouse in the household, then very often that spouse is not the one who's going to pick up the kid at school that just threw up and needs to be picked up. And so her business is what suffers. So we have a lot of work to do, I believe, in this country on that issue. Some of us are silently or maybe not so silently working on that. And I can't close without putting a plug in for SCORE. It's an all-volunteer organization. And if any of you are even interested in finding out more about it and think that you have some skills or talents to share, please let me know. And we'll talk about more of it. I talked with a lady who's just volunteering today, and her specialty is security. But security for the internet and technological security. And she wanted to use the term, she uses the term that she wants to teach everybody that it's hygiene, cyber, that's the word I was looking for. And if she teaches us how to watch out and be careful, not only in our business world, but in our personal world, that we are learning cyber hygiene. That is this young lady's specialty. And, so I urge all of you, if you have not read this book, to go ahead and read it. I hope I've encouraged you to do it. It's not a long book. You can, doesn't take too long to read, but you can hear and read some of the individual stories that we didn't really talk about to go over them. And in the meantime, thank you for giving me the opportunity to become really enthusiastic about this book and to do the research that I hope brought something of interest to all of you. So I'm opening it up. Diane and Jason, if you can see anybody, because I can't really see people if they have their hands up. So just go ahead and.
Judy, if you want to stop your screen share, that would help us see people.
Oh, I could do that. Okay.
No problem. Happy to help.
I'm amazed that I got this.
Did anyone see the small picture in the Chronicle of women in self-defense class dressed in karate-type clothing? Only women, of course.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. Did anybody see it?
I think I did. As Susan has told us before, usually the books that we read have Jewish themes. And I started reading this book and I kept going and going and going. And finally I said, well, this woman is just she's so smart and she's just determined that she's going to get it done. Even though she was Muslim, she had a Yiddish cup. There's definitely no doubt about it. But it was an incredible book. I have recommended it to my book club here at the Four Leaf, and we're going to do it for the April book club, because I told them this is something they should not miss.
And actually, there's at least one person in the Four Leaf Towers that's already read it in my book club. So she'll be in. But I do want, Susan, you want to explain about, I thought if I told you her first name, you would get that she had a Jewish family. But go ahead, Susan.
Okay, two things. One is a reminder that our book club reviews books that are either by a Jewish author and or have Jewish content. In this case, obviously, we had a Jewish author, so that explains that part. The other thing is, this would be an outstanding book for young adults. For those of you who have teenagers who are always looking for something to read, they can read it on their Kindle, they can get a book from the library, but I think this is an outstanding book. You know, it doesn't have sex, it doesn't have any of the gory details. Yeah, oh, it's really, but it's just a fascinating story. And Judy, you had done an excellent job. We are so appreciative. And I think Diane has some comments also.
That was a wonderful book review, Judy. Thank you so much. You put a lot of work into it and it was just wonderful. I think everybody enjoyed it. And I thank you so much for what you've done. On behalf of everybody, thank you for such a wonderful evening and for doing such a spectacular job.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it.
Thank you to Jason and David. We could not do this without you. The next book review will also be, as Jason has put somewhere in chat or something, will also be by Zoom. And I think that you'll really enjoy it, The Star and the Shamrock.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Judy, I wanted to ask you, in your research, did you find anything about tourism in Afghanistan, or just nobody goes, or what?
Well, I didn't find it, but she's got that taxi service for some reason. So some people come there.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not going to be first on my list when I get on the plane the first time.
Want to unmute?
Yeah, you're muted.
Thank you so much. And if anyone has read any books that you'd like for me and Diane to look at and to read for next year, I hope that you won't be shy about sending us titles. Remember, they have to be either by a Jewish author and or have some Jewish content, but we're looking for suggestions. So send me an email or Diane an email. Thank you.
Great job. Great job.
Hi, Ed.